People hear me okay? Sweet. We will wait a couple more minutes. Get started. Varun is traveling today, so you guys get me. It's the MC. Venice is perfect. Yeah, it's pretty great. Share screen. Chrome. Slowly getting people filter in. All right, I'm gonna get started in next 30 seconds. Is there an issue with the calendar? Should we be linking out a different thing?
Well, I'm on the recurring Farcaster dev call calendar and there's a Zoom link there. I don't know if you can update it.
I can't, Varun can, but maybe we could just tweet out or cast out the updated link.
Yeah, I'll do that now.
Awesome, thank you. All right, yeah, if Varun has to pay $1 every time he says frames, I have to pay $10 every time I say tweet.
Nice.
Large number of Okay, like I said to those who are here early, Varun is on a plane right now, so I am running the meeting. Pretty short meeting today, and then happy to address anything that comes up naturally. But 3 sets of priorities. We have a crypto group, a social group, and a protocol group internally, and that kind of maps to what we're working on. Priority for the crypto group is wallet. We are over 80,000 funded wallets. I think one thing we're thinking is kind of like getting to a metric that we feel good in terms of being able to talk about the protocol, and some combination of obviously Warpcast embedded wallet, but with Base coming online, like kind of they're going to have an embedded wallet with Coinbase wallet rebuild, and then thinking through like wallets that are connected through MWP like Rainbow or Coinbase wallet through Warpcast, or if we add other wallets. How do we actually track that? Because I think that's a really powerful thing to talk to developers about. If there is a world of users with funded wallets, especially on Base, but other EVM chains, and then you can imagine a version of the world where we have Solana support in the future. That is like an addressable market for people to have use their mini app, right? And I think that's distinguished or differentiated between Telegram, which is like exclusive to the EVM in terms of their app experience, cryptocurrency with Ton, or sorry, they are exclusive to Ton. They do not support Ethereum or Solana. And that's actually an exclusive relationship that the Ton, in theory, independent foundation has with Telegram, the app. And then I think as it relates to World, which is another ecosystem, I think they're very focused on their chain, where I think Farcaster's opportunity to be is agnostic on the EVM side of things across any chain. Today, obviously, a lot of it is on Base, but it should work with any EVM chain as well as Solana. And I think that is the opportunity for Farcaster mini apps. And so tracking the number of funded wallets at a sufficient level. Circle actually in their S1 defined like meaningful wallets, MEW, as basically $10 with USDC. And I think it's a reasonable proxy. Probably somewhere between 10 and 100 is like meaningful. And obviously there's a component of like, are you actually doing transactions, or are you just parking some money in a wallet to kind of sybil something? But I think that is something that increasingly we're going to be very focused on, because we think it's really valuable for the protocol, specifically for mini apps. The next thing we're focused on is making mini apps better. Team has worked a lot on docs, and then I think we are kind of turning ahead on dev tools. Feedback there is welcome, but I think we'll release, and then I think Tony, Gabriel on our side have been doing a lot of that improvement. We are actively exploring web wallet. So reminder, we use Privy. We launched on mobile first. We are now trying to kind of implement a version of the Warpcast wallet on web. No Chrome extension needed. Obviously, it'll only work on Warpcast. It won't follow you around the web, but it's specifically designed to be really good with frames. There are a bunch of security considerations we want to think through there, so we're going to kind of take our time, but should have some updates soon on that. And then finally, we have a path forward for gasless swap sends prior to 7702 launching. So we are in the process of kind of rolling that out on mobile. So that should address one of the pain points, which you've probably seen, where whether you get some rewards or tips, where it's like, I can't use the USDC because I don't have ETH. A lot of people have suggested, like, why don't you just send some ETH? ETH is an accounting mess. If you do a lot of small payments all over time, and our bias is just like, send USDC, deal with some of the pain now, implement this kind of version of gasless, and then once 7702 is kind of baked, and we kind of make the plunge into upgrading in place our users' or Warpcast wallets to smart wallets, then we can use paymasters on something like Base. So basically can kind of make everything gas free. Path for gasless before 7702. Maybe Daniel, you can just like respond high level as a comment, or if not, we can just kind of do that on Farcaster so people can understand what we're doing. But should be rolling out, or already have rolled out in some ways. But I think expect like a bunch of stuff to roll out today and tomorrow related to some of this stuff. Any other questions on wallet mini apps before we move on to the next? Going once. Okay, so moving on to social. The big experiment that we've been working on here is trending topics. So we had played around with doing some of this stuff over the last couple of years, and it never kind of quite worked. I think one of the big benefits of just having these LLM models get really sophisticated and importantly cheap is, despite it not being maybe the most efficient thing in the world, is you can actually just take a subset of casts on the network and then have an LLM just like read the cast and say, like, what is this about? Break it down into topics. And so you can kind of build a pipeline there. One other thing that it's actually pretty good at, and I think we might have mentioned this on a dev call before, so if I'm repeating myself, just please put it in the chat. But if, let's say you have a screenshot of like Solana Rust code, and like you kind of like have it as like one of those nice like code screenshots, the like model can actually just like interpret that and then like understand. And so I think if you think of a lot of casts on the network, they have a lot of context that comes through an image, right? Think of like memes, but like I think generally images plus the text is important. And so the ability to like kind of understand that and then categorize it is giving us the ability to then kind of like group conversations. And so should have something rolling out over the next couple of days. Maybe it goes to next week, but like one example right now, we have it internally and it's working pretty well. Like tariffs, it's just able to just like get every cast that people are talking about related to tariffs and put them in one place. And so you can kind of think of this as a more of an ephemeral version of a channel, which in some ways, like the best channels tend to actually be like pretty topic constrained. Like Crypto the Game worked really well because it was like about one thing over like a set amount of time. And so I think, and I actually don't want people to be confused on this. This is not a channel. It is not FIP2. It is literally a feature we are doing at the Warpcast level to start. And if it continues to work well and people like it, I think there's probably some way of actually kind of like pushing this information to the protocol or via API so that other apps can both benefit from this, but also contribute. And like, I think ultimately it's the same thing as like a home feed algo, is that it starts to get a little hard and everyone's going to want to tune their stuff their own way. I can see like Christopher's smiling over here as he's thinking about like his data pipelines and stuff. And so the reality is we're going to run it as an experiment. If people really like it, then we're going to try to think through, it's like, what's the best way to kind of like make this work the protocol? And one of those answers might be everyone does their own version, and maybe Warpcast can have some version of like spam labels that we make public that other people can actually contribute or again, like decide to ingest or not. Let's see. Okay, no more questions there. So just expect this to roll out. It will be experimental. There will be people who try to like abuse it, where it's like, oh, let me trick the LLM to thinking like this post is about, whatever topic, and instead it's like buy my cryptocurrency. We will remove those people from the experiment, so they will lose their privilege of like being part of the trending topics. I will make that clear when we launch it. And the idea of like the goal is to just like make this more relevant for people to find interest on the platform. And if it can scale, like basically it can scale to any topic that you possibly would be interested in. Also probably have downstream effects in terms of like you search for a topic and then you're able to find those casts, even if like it's not exactly the keyword and stuff like that. Storage redenomination, sorry, a mouthful. Varun is working on an FIP here, but basically I think we've done versions of this in the past, and or we've talked about it in CAS, but there will be an official FIP for our proposal on how to bring down the cost of signups. Reminder that cost of signups today at the protocol level are $2. I think we'd like to bring that down under $1, and a path to getting it closer to something like 10 cents, which you can roughly think of like an app like WhatsApp. Basically has to verify everybody's phone number. That's like roughly the cost of onboarding to WhatsApp. And so it's cheaper for them in terms of their scale, but like order magnitude. And so I think like getting it to about 10 cents means we are going to have smaller storage units, and then think through how do you manage storage per user in a world where you have cheaper but smaller storage units. And so that will be all encompassed in the FIP. People can kind of debate it on GitHub and kind of go through things, but just getting it on people's radar that is a big priority for us, because our goal, and this is actually where we're spending most of our effort on the social side of things for Warpcast, is we are doing a kind of biannual like repass of onboarding. So fresh coat of paint on onboarding, simplify it as much as possible. And then the big goal for us is to actually get to a point where Warpcast will have free signups if, you connect a social account, which to start, I think will be X, but then we will kind of like have other ways potentially to do that. But the goal is to just make it so that the 50% of people who drop off at the payment screen can get through. There will be an increase in spam on the network as a result of that. And so it's just something that we're going to iteratively manage and go through. We still will allow paid signups because not everyone has an X account. But I do think it's like the way to think about it is we are trying to move the onboarding experience on Warpcast. And I would imagine other apps, if signups are cheap, they will move to this as well, as there's some level of underwriting based on you connect an X account, you do a phone number from a country that doesn't have like, phone number fraud, and like basically can actually get most users into the network for free to start, which I think is really important. Any questions on either of those? Okay. Last one, which I think storage changes. I'd say it's like probably, I probably wouldn't want to, I think it's like within a month, but I think we'll put the FIP out there, get feedback, but I think there's bias towards trying to move quickly on this, but like at the same time, like we're not changing it today or tomorrow. Base integration, I think they probably could give a timeline, so maybe at Jesse just to kind of see what he would say. But I think my general like understanding is team is actively working on it. We are making a bunch of changes with the protocol to kind of like get things, set up. We have this like auth address FIP is kind of on the radar. Now that Snapchain is out, I think we're going to kind of start working on some of the other things related to that. But I think that the way I would think about it is they are an order of magnitude larger than the entire Farcaster network in terms of monthly active users on Coinbase Wallet. I don't know if they've ever publicly disclosed, but like they are in the millions, whereas like we have 1 million total signups. And we are working closely with them to try to get as many of the legit users on Coinbase Wallet to have an FID. And the goal there then would be if you launch a mini app, it's like write it once, deploy it once, and then it's showing up in both ecosystems, right? Using Farcaster as kind of that shared layer. So should be a pretty big increase in TAM in terms from a developer standpoint. And going back to the side of funded wallets, I think that would probably be the best proxy of like, is this useful in a world where you believe that mini app developers actually care about generating transactions? But yeah, I think we're doing a bunch of work, and there's been a lot of the stuff that Linda's doing, but like to try to actually get a better handle on like how we can market the protocol to developers in terms of like baseline metrics. And so by getting that infrastructure in place now, as Base brings on kind of the Coinbase wallet user base, we can kind of see that at the protocol level. Yeah, great. Talk to Aniri. You don't even need to message Jesse. Yeah, she's here. So great. I did have one topic on many apps to discuss. Time permits. Time is permitting. So would you like to talk about that now?
Yeah. One thing that's unclear right now in terms of mini apps is transactions that might be happening for a given mini app. They're not like clearly defined on the protocol where like we can look at the blockchain and attribute these transactions to this mini app and so on. If there's a way to kind of like augment the spec or like maybe define it at the contract level such that there's a pointer between the two where we can openly determine the number of transactions or like what transactions are driven by which mini app, it would help with regards to like ranking, sorting on the open side of things. Right now, like given that Workcast is able to do it internally because you have exactly the traceability of like which transactions are happening through what mini apps.
Yeah, maybe Tony, if you want to address that, but my high level thoughts here, this is now going to get challenging because Base will be generating, some percent, maybe even more than Workcast. And so then you're going to have this issue where our leaderboard is going to only be within our ecosystem. So getting to some solution could be useful. The one thing that immediately jumps out to me that I always try to find like, okay, where's the downside of this is I launch, not me, but a developer launches OnlyFans equivalent mini app. You're really into feet pictures or whatever. And the idea is those transactions now getting tagged on the the protocol for everyone to see. So I think like just like thinking through like how we do that, how that gets messaged to developers, like is there a reasonable expectation of privacy of what apps you're interacting with? Now, obviously the transaction today exists, but like maybe they're generating a new address each time. So I think like just thinking through like what are the privacy implications on various mini apps, and maybe this is like an opportunity for Veil, like from a protocol standpoint to like, oh, you can do like a private mini app transaction, but still attribute it and you don't know what it is. But that would be my immediate reaction. Tony, anything to add?
No, I think Connor might be the better person to talk about this. He's thought a lot about metadata around transactions. And yeah, I think like there's some good ideas, but it's hard. Like another is horsebacks, my bad. Like spoofing is another problem. If you just like tag transactions, like how do you actually know that that's a Farcaster transaction and it's not like someone just adding this metadata to try to like, boost the numbers on something. So getting, horsebacks, do you have any other thoughts on like, is there a simple kind of end-to-end attribution scheme we can do here?
Yeah, so the simplest thing we could probably use is a call data tag on chain, which we did in Frames v1. There are some edge cases with doing that. So this is where you append some extra call data after the end of your contract call data. And that works in like 90% of cases, unless you're sending, basically if you're sending ETH directly to a smart contract, then that tag can be interpreted as the function selector for that call. So you need to like exclude it in that case, but that's an edge case I think people can work around. And this is a pretty common pattern. It's like how OpenSea marketplaces do on-chain attributions, and 0x uses these on-chain tags for attributions. So typical patterns there are like you use a hash of the domain and append that at the end. Or we could come up with a standard. I think in Frames v1, we actually use like some encoding of the FID of the client and the FID of the cast and stuff like that. Back in v1, we were concerned about the length of that call data, right? Like you don't want to append hundreds of bytes of call data off the end of some contract call, because at the time L1 call data was still expensive, but that problem has been solved on most L2s now that we have blobs. So we probably have room to experiment there and figure out something like that. So that's what I would reach for if we can come up with a call data tag based standard that works for everyone. The main problem I'd say with v1, it worked really well, but we had some tools in the ecosystem kind of switch it off by default, and so we lost a lot of that attribution kind of shortly into Frames v1. And so if you go back and look at the data, you can see that we had it for a long time, and then it kind of drops off the Dune dashboard at the point where we switched the default setting to toggle it off. So the important thing I think is to get ahead of like what the pain points are for using these tags for users and figure out solutions to those, so that the instinct isn't to disable it.
Cool. Anything else on that, Manon? Or is that
No, I think just wanted to put it on your guys' radar so that we can start putting that into the spec. Yeah.
Great.
Cool.
And then the last thing on social, we've done this weekly kudos, which we don't call kudos, we're just calling it Tip Tuesdays. Seems like it's going somewhat well. I think one piece of feedback here is that it like overwhelms people's feeds. So there's like a topic in our mind, or like a backlog item in our mind of like, how do you actually, and this is going to apply to Frames. It's like when you have a viral social moment on the network, like what is a good way of collapsing everything into kind of like almost emphasize like a bunch of people are doing this, like tap in to see it. But then like, if you don't actually want to see who everyone got tipped, like you can kind of opt out of that. I think our bias is like the energy has been really great on it, so we're gonna kind of let it go for probably a week or two more and just kind of see, and maybe it naturally modulates. But the goal there is just to like at a base level is to increase the velocity of money on the network in terms of just like getting people in the habit of like sending transactions, doing transactions. I think it's a unique feature for Farcaster, and also a unique feature in some ways for like doing this stuff with blockchains, right? It's like the ability for like the amount of gas you spend on base and using, I think we use disperse, correct me if I'm wrong for the people on my team, but like we do one transaction and then boom, like you can send it. I sent it to 100 people, which was like an amazing thing within like 3 seconds. 100 separate transactions actually can happen. And so I think we're just going to continue to iterate here. Like maybe we bring in other people on that list in terms of like, today it's really who you interact with, but maybe people who interact with you that you also kind of like counter interact with. And so getting to a place where it's kind of like creating a kind of a moment for people to actually go and kind of do something on chain. And I think that the important thing to think about is $1 is probably not going to like life-changing for most people, but the idea, in the same way that I think a lot of feedback we've had around the USDC rewards from workcasts that are kind of like weekly, is it's less about the money for a lot of people as much as the kind of like recognition, and it feels more meaningful than just like a like, right? So I think it's just an area that we're going to continue to explore. I think we have other ideas in this vein, and kudos to Woj for kind of the quick ship here and like getting this out. But I think like we very much want to lean into the idea that every user on Farcaster by definition has a wallet. Technically that's a custody address, but like increasingly you're going to see this with Forecast, and then I think with kind of Base's forthcoming like redesign of Coinbase Wallet is like Farcaster clients are wallets, like and actually making that a core part of the social experience is a differentiating feature for us. Any other questions there? Okay, Protocol. So Snapchain is live. Like, great job to the team on that. Sanjay, do you want to do any other updates here other than please go to this doc, which I can share in the chat?
Just had a quick update. Basically, if you're running hubs or using hubs in any way, you should also be using Snapchain by now. Like you should be reading and writing from Snapchain in addition to hubs. Webcast, as of yesterday, has been showing messages that have been submitted to Snapchain. I believe Nina is working on integrating as well. And once they are done, we should switch to everybody who's using hubs must submit to Snapchain. And like beginning sometime next week, submitting to hubs becomes optional. Snapchain becomes source of truth. If anybody's running into any issues, let me know. Happy to help. And yeah, so far it's going smoothly.
I just huge shout out to Sanjay, Aditi, Cassie, and a couple of other folks on the team has worked on this. It's like pretty tight group of people that, you know, concept to delivery in a pretty short amount of time. So I think this is pretty awesome, and it really allows us to scale quite a bit. And I know Manan is going to be very happy to not think about, like, you know, kind of all the sync issues with hubs that we are now avoiding, especially once Base comes into the ecosystem.
Well, yes, on docs, we're working on a new doc site. We should have that out maybe sometime this week or early next week. So so for now, you can use the existing hub API docs. They're exactly the same. There's like a migrating to Snapchain doc. Let me just share that. But you can expect fresh docs soon.
Cool. Just a couple other points that just so people are aware. We're making a big effort to try to improve docs. I think we've gotten away with bad docs over the history of the protocol, and a lot of Notion docs and kind of scattered, but like we're really trying to get things more organized, make them clearer, like the navigation really good. I think like just the context with Notion is like, I think a doc is better than no doc. And so getting something out really fast usually is good. But I think we are trying to improve, like, you know, taking the time when we're shipping a lot of this stuff with mini apps, with Snapchain, even Workcast APIs that we make available. Like it's not done until there's an actual public facing doc and on the website. So trying to improve there. I think the second thing that we are trying to improve is just like communicate priorities more often, right? So we have this biweekly dev meeting where we have these priorities. I've probably seen, I've been really trying to do like top level priority posts where I just try to explain as clearly as possible things that are going on in the ecosystem. Varun is doing that as well. I think the feedback that I am hoping to get from y'all is like when I do that stuff, and you'll notice I've been using a lot of these like, you know, kind of developer chat groups, like input requested. It's really great when folks who, especially coming to this meeting, weigh in. And like, if you're disagreeing with what we're doing, that's completely fine. Like, that's the whole point. Like, KMAC doesn't think we should rename, you know, Farcaster or Warpcast to Farcaster. Like, that's fine. Like, I want people to respond. But I do actually think if you agree with some of the stuff that we're doing, and or you're like, this is important, like this helps me, publicly actually saying that, even in a small thing, like it shows that there are a lot of other people who are like care about what's going on with Farcaster, but like are kind of aligned with some of the stuff we're doing. And I want to be really clear, that's not saying like I only want you to respond with like positive. Like the point is actually engaging on some of those things. It helps like other people realize that like we are trying to spend a bunch of time coordinating both at this meeting and then with a bunch of other initiatives. And so that'd be my like one request is like we're trying to do a better job communicating, but bidirectional communication is actually valuable for both us in terms of feedback, but also I think signaling to the rest of the folks on, you know, the social network that it's like, oh, like the decisions they're making actually have some level of buy-in, or they've communicated previously. I'm sure Linda can kind of like reach out and get you into the right groups. I mean, we've tried to simplify the number of them. Like there's a group for mini apps. I think we have a couple of like more broad developer groups, but maybe we should actually just create like a canonical one of like the bi-weekly people who show up to this meeting, like we should just invite to a group and have that be there. But I think the goal is we try to put as much stuff out publicly first, and then we use the groups as like kind of like a way to like get your attention a bit on it. Any other questions? God, Zoom's chat interface is awful. Okay, Android 16. I think weighing in publicly on casts that are basically sharing what we're doing is completely fine. The note is if you're going to weigh in publicly, I might argue with you a little bit. I'm trying to be nicer in terms of arguing, but like the idea is like I'm trying to debate the merits of the idea, and so the expectation is like we'll talk about that. I think if you're looking for a little bit more like I want to give you a raw opinion, but I don't really want to debate publicly, then you can send it to me in DCs. I probably will still debate a bit with you in DCs, but you'll maybe get a different version. But yeah, I think like whatever format, I think the big thing is just weighing in is actually valuable. Whatever format you want to do it. Okay, anything else? Otherwise, I'm gonna end the call. Sweet. Oh, wait. Curious if there would be audio settings for mini apps. Yeah, I think, Tony, maybe you guys have it as a backlog item of like special buttons to like mute this mini app or like whatever.
Yeah, I think that the two main options are like, is there a consistent pattern where we're like, hey, let's expose like media controls in there, and they're kind of like these fixed things, which I think is probably the most promising direction. The other one is like, should it actually just be like an open surface where like apps can completely control it and like render cool, like I forget what the iOS feature is it like Magic Island or something, but like they have these new Dynamic Island. Magic Island, I guess, is free for us to use. But yeah, we've thought about it. I think we probably like we don't even have minimized apps on web yet, and so we're kind of like behind on all of this. So I think we're really trying to get everything stable where it's like if you're a new dev coming in here, you can go use mini apps. It's consistent on web and mobile. And so I think there's probably like a week or two of just like still grinding away on that. And then maybe we'll have seen like more minimized app use cases, and we'll have a better idea of where we can go from there.
Cool. Sweet. Anything else? All right. I think so. I guess next week we don't have this. The week after is still pre-Farcon, so we will have the meeting, and then or Varun may say, hey, we're already doing this at Farcon, so we might not do it. TBD. So just pay attention to the social network. We will make announcements there. All right. Thank you.